Hi, I'm Kyla, and you're watching KP's Cookies, where I show you how to make cookies baked with love in every bite. Today, we're making one of my all-time favorites, espresso chocolate chip shortbread cookies. Welcome to my kitchen. Let's get started. While these cookies are insanely easy, they do require a little bit of prep. So you have to make sure that you have some boiling water, that your butter's already soft, and that you've put together all of your ingredients so that they're ready to go as soon as your boiling water has begun to cool. Now, I begin with boiling water because I'm also beginning with espresso. And I'm going to want to make sure that I have my espresso nice and cool and dissolved in some boiling water, just a small amount, before I even begin. Because when we do move on to the next part of the mixture, which involves butter or a butter substitute, if you're making a vegan version of this cookie, which I am today, you're going to want it to be cool so it doesn't melt to that butter. Now, just like our regular cookies, we are beginning with something like a butter for our base. I am making a vegan version so that I can share these with my sister and so that I can lick the spoon later. You can do this with regular butter as well. I'm using vegan earth balance as my base because a shortbread cookie is based in butter. There aren't any eggs to hold it up. You don't need any leavening like a baking soda or baking powder because these cookies really are, all of their structure comes from that butter. So I'm going to want to make sure that when I go ahead and mix it in that I have it nice and soft and creamed before I go ahead and add my sugar in. Once the butter is creamed, you've pretty much done all of the hard work for this cookie. I'm going to go ahead and add my sugar. For this one, I'm using powdered sugar, which is basically just confectioner's sugar ground up to a 10 times finer grain. Obviously, I'm not doing the grinding. I buy my powdered sugar pre-ground. But all I have to do is go ahead and add that in and cream that with my sugar, with my butter rather, or my vegan butter, if you will, just like I would any other regular cookie. From here, all I'm really going to have to do is just add in the rest of my wet ingredients, and since there's no eggs or bananas or anything else really, it's just going to be my vanilla, which you know I love, and my espresso, which has cooled to a nice room temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and add the vanilla first. Once again, I like them very sweet, and the sweetness really does complement the espresso flavor, so I go for it here. Got my vanilla and got my espresso. Now don't be afraid of it. It's going to look like a lot of espresso, but honestly, the flavor itself is so perfect that don't be afraid to go for it. Don't be afraid to add that extra little bit. So go ahead and mix that in. All right, wet ingredients are already done. I personally love the smell of coffee in any form, so these cookies are pretty much my addiction. Alright, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and add in my spice mixture, because you do want to have some spices to complement the flavor of the espresso. And last but not least, flour. You're going to have 3 times the amount of flour that you do sugar, at least, because you are going to want enough flour to hold the structure of this after you've added the wet ingredients. You know, I go a little bit overboard on the wet ingredients like the vanilla, the espresso, so I want to make sure that I have these cookies and not just globs. Nice and mixed. Once you have a beautiful looking cookie dough, the very last thing that you're going to add, and my favorite thing after vanilla, chocolate chips. Go ahead and add as many as you'd like. You can also add in chunks of chocolate. You can even try it with other ingredients that might complement the flavors of the espresso, something like a toffee, maybe even peanut butter chips if you're feeling really, really adventurous, but personally, I think all you need is chocolate chips. All you need are chocolate chips. So go ahead and add those in and mix it up. And that's all it takes for an amazing, amazing cookie. The only thing you're going to want to keep in mind with these cookies is that while the prep is very fast, you are going to have a long wait period before you can make them because they're shortbread. Shortbread is mainly butter. You want them to have enough structure to be substantial that they don't just melt on that cookie sheet. So what I'm going to do is actually take the cookie dough, which is very soft, and go ahead and put it in a plastic bag. You can do this with any sort of container that you like. Personally, I just like the plastic bag. One thing you can do is if you wanted a larger plastic bag, you can roll it out so that you have like a nice log. It'll be easier to chop, but I like to have my cookies actually just in a chunk that I can roll by hand. So I take this and I'm going to stick it in the freezer. Or I'm going to let it sit for just a couple of hours to get substantial enough before I go ahead and throw them into the oven. So, see you in a couple hours. So I had my cookies in the freezer for about 2 hours, but I'm ready to go ahead and bake them. About 10 minutes ago, I moved them over into the fridge in order to thaw them just a teeny bit. So I'm going to go ahead and grab them out. I'm going to go ahead and shape them into regular drop cookies before we go ahead and stick them into the oven. For these cookies, you'll be able to break them off into little chunks. I like to eyeball it to about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half, up to a tablespoon in size. These cookies aren't going to spread or rise at all, so just keep that in mind when you go ahead and make them. If you make them small, unlike a regular cookie, they're not going to end up looking a lot larger. So this is for you cookie monsters out there who like big cookies. You're going to want to make big cookies. This is about a teaspoon. Okay, so time to go into the oven. Alright, the shortbread cookies are ready to come out when they've just begun to brown on the bottom. They do take a little bit longer to cook, as well as at slightly higher heat than my regular cookies, but once they're done, they are probably the most incredible cookies that you could ever encounter. So there you go. Tiny mounds of happiness, otherwise known as espresso chocolate chip shortbread cookies. Thanks for watching KP's Cookies, where love is always the main ingredient. And remember, love is FDA approved and recommended as a part of your healthy diet. So, let me know if you want a batch. We'll see you next time.